Alright everybody, I know it has been a while since I last uploaded an Asian football related video leading up to this World Cup, but for your patience, I have an absolute banger here for you all. We're gonna go through every single Asian national team that has qualified for the World Cup, and I'm gonna pick out each national team's best player and a possible breakout star that we will see at this World Cup. So if you don't know which Asian national teams I will be talking about, maybe you live under a rock, that's gonna be Japan, South Korea, Australia, Iran, Uzbekistan, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia. So a total of 7 national teams and maybe even a possible 8 if Iraq do qualify. But since they haven't quite yet, I won't include them for this video. Maybe I'll do another one, an updated one based on your guys' comments, maybe other players we should talk about. But a total of 14 players we're gonna be talking about today. As I said, this is just gonna be my opinion on which players fall under each category and who I view as the best player and who qualifies as a breakout star. It doesn't per se necessarily mean they have to be a young budding star or a player that we don't know about. Each national team I think has a varying topic of discussion, issue, position of need, detriments, whatever it may be. So depending on the national team, it could vary on what I would consider a breakout star we might see for them at this World Cup. It could be a young rising baller, or it could even be a player that we've absolutely written off that I think could have an absolute stardom moment at the 2026 World Cup. You're just gonna have to wait and see. So before we get into it, if you are new to the channel and are a big fan of Asian football, but more specifically the Iranian national team, this is the channel that you need to be at, so make sure to subscribe. And let's try to get this video over 100 likes, because it took a long time to research players, make decisions, formulate all of this for you all. So show your Asian national team some love by dropping a like on this video. And if you disagree with any of the players that I picked out, I'm not an absolute Asian football whiz kid. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. As I said, I might do a part 2 to this video, especially if Iraq qualifies. Maybe we could touch upon some other players that you guys thought should have fallen under the categories for this video. But without further ado, let's jump into this. So for the first national team, we're going to start off with Japan. And for their best player, I've gone with Takefusa Kubo, who is a right winger that plays for Real Sociedad. And then for their breakout star, I've gone with Junnosuke Suzuki, who is a center back that plays for Copenhagen. With the Japanese national team, they probably have the biggest plethora when it comes to top tier talent. But unlike maybe with a South Korea or an Iran or even in Australia, there's not really that one guy, the big star for this national team. So it's kind of up in the air on who you think is that player for Japan. So the options are there, but for me personally, I went with Kubo. He's always been a guy that we thought could do some big things for Japan, and he still can. It's not at all the case where he's written off or anything like that. He has just played for some high-end teams. He has been playing in La Liga throughout majority of his career. He has such a high ceiling, and he has set the bar very high for himself. We all know the talent is there when it comes to Kubo, and I think we've seen some of the best out of him in the recent World Cup qualification. You can tell the system that Moriyasu is deploying right now really suits him. When he's playing in that cam role, unlike maybe playing on the wing like he does at Real Sociedad, I feel he looks more comfortable. He plays with more fluidity. We see the best out of Kubo, and the reality is for the Japanese national team and why I considered him their best player, there's no real competition for him not to start for this team. And I feel like by definition, that makes him their best player. And I think if Kubo does what he does best, we could see an historic World Cup for Japan. But now when it comes to that rising star, the breakout player for Japan at this World Cup, I went with Suzuki. When it comes to the Japanese national team right now, I think they have a little bit of an issue in the center back department. Moriyasu deploys a 3-back system, and with injuries and not great form for players like Tomiyasu or Machida, I think we could see Suzuki be the guy for them defensively. Make him that breakout star, the player that no one expected to stand above the rest. Yes, Japan is a very well-oiled machine, but defensively they can be fragile. We saw it in the Asian Cup. We saw it in instances when they play those lesser opponents in World Cups. And I think Suzuki brings a lot to the table in Moriyasu's 3-back system. He was really good in 2025 before making the move to the Danish league with Copenhagen, and he has been a really reliable and top quality center back. So with all those factors of their possible defensive issues, the vets not quite being the guys anymore defensively for them, I think Suzuki really hits the nail on the head here. I will say one quick side note though, I do think one argument you could make is for Zion Suzuki. I know another Suzuki has just been added to the chat, but for the fact that the goalkeeping position has been a position of such confusion for the Japanese national team from years on end, and especially after the performances we saw from Zion Suzuki at the Asian Cup, to now him having top performances in the Serie, you could even make a case for him. I decided to go with something a little bit different, a player I haven't really spoken about on the channel, with Junnosuke Suzuki. And now moving on to South Korea. And for their best player, of course, it's got to be Son Heung-min, who is a left winger that now plays in the MLS for LAFC. And for their breakout star, it might come as a little bit of a surprise for you all, but I'm going to go with Lee Kang-in, who is a center attacking mid that plays for PSG. When it comes to South Korea, I think it is a big toss-up for what players may fit these categories for this national team. Some might argue Son isn't the guy anymore. He plays for LAFC. You could maybe argue Lee Kang-in is now the guy for the national team because he plays for PSG. Maybe even scrap these guys. Neither of these qualify for either of these categories for South Korea. But for me personally, I still think Sonny is the guy for South Korea, even though he's playing for LAFC. Because I'd make the argument he is in some top form right now in MLS. I think his partnership with Dennis Bouanga, getting consistent minutes, not having that wear and tear of playing for a top club in Europe that adds European competition, high levels of training, all of that, with already being in the US when the US is where the World Cup is going to be held at, I think are all factors that play in Sonny's hands. I think for players like Son, who has a lot of weight on his shoulders, yes, would it be ideal for him to still be playing at a top level in Europe? Yeah, maybe. But as well, I think confidence, bagging goals on a consistent basis really help a player depending on what phase they are in their career. And I think for him, being able to constantly bag goals, be high on confidence, high in morale, and getting acclimated in the country that the World Cup is going to be at plays a big part. And we've even seen it in some of Korea's recent friendlies. Sonny is still bagging goals, still looking real crispy on the field. And in my opinion, is still a leader, their best player, the guy that can grab the team by the scruff of the neck and drag them out of any situation. But now when it comes to the breakout star, for South Korea, I think the issue has always been who will be the next guy once the mantle is over with Sonny. And I've talked about it in numerous videos. I think Lee Kang-in can take up that mantle. I'm very bullish on him. I think he's a spectacular player. I think the biggest problem for him is he doesn't quite get much consistent game time at PSG. And that's the tough part when you're playing for arguably the best team in the world right now. There are some pros, there are some cons. He gets to train day in, day out with the best players in the world, but he has to constantly be fighting for a spot. Can't get a consistent momentum of games strung together. He scores a goal one week, he hits the bench the next week, he makes a good cameo appearance another week. It's tough. That's the most difficult part when you are playing in Europe and trying to make your name there. And I think for me, what makes Lee Kang-in my possible breakout star is because of the shoes he might need to fill. Depends on how you gauge what role he's gonna play for South Korea in years to come. I think he is gonna be the next Sonny. I think he can take up that mantle. I think he is arguably more talented than Sonny was at this age. And maybe we see that shift go into the World Cup. Yes, people know about him, but I don't think people outside of maybe like the South Koreans and us like Asian football heads really rate him that highly. They probably just think of him as just some mediocre South Korean player that's just in the PSG mix. But when you see him play for South Korea in friendlies and qualifiers, dude is legit. So I think at this World Cup, if Lee Kang-in can take some of that burden off Sonny's shoulders, be a main guy, be given the mantle, create some big opportunities, score some big goals, I think it will turn a lot of heads. And maybe in Son's case, see that, hey, I think I know who's going to be taking this king of the throne for South Korea. So that's just how I viewed it when it came to Lee Kang-in being my breakout star. But I can understand if you guys look at it in a completely different direction. As I said throughout this video, I think it's very like situational depending on the national team, because I think there is a variety scope of things that qualify players in each category. And I don't think it is very linear or the same for each country. Now moving on to Australia. For their best player, I'm going with Jackson Irvine, who is a center midfielder that plays for St. Pauli. And then for their breakout star, I'm going to go with Nestory Irankunda, who is a right winger that plays for Watford. I will just be straight up and just say that Australia's national team, in regards to the in-depth analysis of player to player, I am not the greatest at. Obviously, I know the Australian national team from their history and the way they play because I've been following them like very surface level like since I started watching Asian football. But when it comes to their players, I try to do some research, and this is kind of what I've landed on. Jackson Irvine has been a staple for the Australian midfield for a while. He plays at St. Pauli, a decent side in the Bundesliga, has been Australia's main guy throughout World Cups, World Cup qualifications. So I felt he's probably the right choice there. When it comes to Irankunda, this one I'm pretty confident on my pick on. Because after seeing him do a whole promo announcement when he joined Watford with my boy Zealand, I was like, okay, I need to check out what Irankunda is all about. And he is a really, really underrated player in my eyes. Obviously, because he's Australian, he's going to be slagged off quite a bit. He's not a European player, but he is a very interesting type of profile for the Australian national team, because I really don't think they really have a guy like Irankunda. And I think him making that move to Watford has really turned heads, has really helped up his level as a footballer. And now the real question is, can he make it translate for the Australian national team? I think the midfield is one of Australia's strong points, and I think that is thanks to Irvine. But when it comes to that final third, a player that can create half chances, put in those 50-50 balls, make a difference when the game kind of maybe goes sideways or you don't quite have the possession or you might not have the control. I think that's where Irankunda comes into play. He's been a decent player so far for Watford. I think it's now, where do you implement him? How do you implement him in this Australian team? How do we get the best out of him to help this Australian attack? I think Popovich has done a good job since he has been hired from the shit show that they had under Graham Arnold to start qualification. He definitely settled the ship, got them to the World Cup, did what he had to do. But now can he get this national team to that second gear, to the Australia that we have seen in the last two World Cups, where most people doubted them. They didn't think they would get out of groups. To put the national team that they face off in the round of 16 to the sword, when most people wouldn't have thought they would do that, and get him to that next stage. And I think Irankunda could be a guy that can help that, to be a breakout star, to really put his name on the map, because most people don't really know about him. And I think he can be a huge X factor for Australia in the World Cup. So that's what I went with for Australia. But as I said, I'm not an expert when it comes to the national team. So for any of the Australian football fans that may be watching this video, please let me know if there's any other players I should have on my radar that I can maybe feature in the next time I do this video as a part 2. Let me know in the comments down below. But now for Iran, for their best player, I've gone with Mehdi Taremi, who is a striker for Olympiacos. And for their breakout star, I've gone with Mohammadjavad Hosseinnejad, who is a center attacking mid who plays for Dynamo Makhachkala. So I've talked about the Iranian national team many times, and I think it's very cut and dry when it comes to our best player. I think Mehdi Taremi, heads and toes, club level, national team level, is the guy for Iran. He has been the best player throughout any success we have had in recent World Cups and World Cup qualification, in the Champions League, at club level. He is raising the Iranian football flag very, very high. The biggest problem for the Iranian national team, as I've done numerous videos talking about, is the integration of younger players. Taremi is 4 years old now, and we have hardly or not whatsoever integrated any youngsters in the national team fold. And Mohammadjavad Hosseinnejad has been a guy that I've waxed lyrical about on the channel. And I do think you could arguably say, like maybe Alahir Said Manesh, maybe Mohammad Qurbani, as other players that you could talk about as Iran's breakout star. But for me, I've gone with Hosseinnejad because I think he has a huge X factor, maybe similar to Irankunda, that he can add to the national team that we need in our midfield, because our midfield is booty. It's not good. Ezzatullahi and Qudus are absolute aging dinosaur rocks in the midfield. And if Hosseinnejad is given the keys for this midfield, I think we would reap some big rewards for players like Azmoun, Taremi, who need a guy like him helping take off some of that weight offensively in the midfield, progressing the ball from defense to offense. He has proven that in the Russian league that he can be that guy. And now moving on to Uzbekistan. For their best player, it is very obvious. It's got to be Abdukodir Khusanov, the center back from Manchester City. And for their breakout star, I'm going with Abbosbek Fayzullaev, who is a right winger that plays for Istanbul Başakşehir. When it comes to the main star, yes, on paper, it is probably Khusanov, but I can understand the argument for Shomurodov. But for me personally, I like Khusanov. I've talked about him very highly on the channel before his move to Manchester City. I love the guy. I think he could arguably be the best defender in Asian football history. He has that type of ceiling. He has gotten a lot more minutes for Manchester City this season. I think the unfortunate part is whenever there's any defensive mistake when he is playing, he's always the scapegoat, even if it's not his fault. I think that's the biggest part that sucks a lot. But Pep Guardiola seems to have a lot of faith in him. And if Pep Guardiola has a lot of faith in Khusanov, then I got a lot of faith in Khusanov. He is their star. He is the known entity that most just footballing fans know about for Uzbekistan. They're going into their first World Cup, and he's a guy that plays with top level talent day in, day out for one of the biggest teams in the world. So he's gotta be the guy for Uzbekistan at this World Cup. I know he is young. He is somewhat inexperienced in a sense, but to be one of the center backs for Manchester City, he just has to take that mantle. But for the breakout star, I think there are a few good options here, but I went with Fayzullaev. I've seen him play many times in World Cup qualifications, seen him score goals against Iran when it absolutely pissed me off, but he is legit and has as well a very high ceiling. He finally made the jump to a respectable European league, going to the Turkish league with Istanbul Başakşehir, and now we gotta see, will he keep climbing up the ranks? Will he keep performing well? And I think he has been relatively good for them. He has scored a couple goals. He has been very flashy, but I think the Turkish league is only a good stepping stone for him to continue moving up. I don't think, and nor should it be, the end-all be-all for him to just stay in this league. He needs to keep going, and he's got the character abilities to do so. So when it comes to Fayzullaev, I think he can be a breakout star, like Irankunda, like Hosseinnejad. I think they have a lot of the similar qualities. That X factor creates those half chances for their teams, and especially for a lot of these Asian national teams. They're not gonna be the main national team. They're not gonna hold a lot of possession. They're gonna be playing a lot more conservative. They're gonna need people to make difference makers. And for Uzbekistan, especially with no experience at a World Cup ever, a guy like him can be all the difference for them. In a game against Portugal, you're down by 1. You need a moment of magic. Fayzullaev can give you that. So that's why I went with him when it comes to their breakout star. But I know there's definitely some other options you could go with when it comes to Uzbekistan, because they have been killing it when it comes to youth football. They've done a great job at that, and I've said that in numerous videos. So to all my Uzbek fans, White Wolf fans, let me know any other players I should highlight if I do end up doing a part 2. And now next up is Qatar. And for their best player, it's most definitely got to be Akram Afif, who's a left winger for Al Sadd. And for their breakout star, I'm going to go with Pedro Miguel, who is a center back that as well plays for Al Sadd. Akram Afif, I don't really know if there's that much to talk about. He is head and shoulders Qatar's only saving grace. He's the biggest reason and probably the only reason Qatar are at this World Cup. He has literally grabbed this national team by the scruff of the neck and was like, you know what, guys, I'm putting you on my back. I'm getting us to this World Cup. He's done it in Asian Cups. He did it in this qualification cycle. So I don't really know if there's that much more that needs to be said when it comes to Afif. When it comes to the breakout star, I was thinking about going with a youngster here. Maybe like Tahsin Jamshid, but I ended up opting with Pedro Miguel. Their defense is bad. And as I said, with Akram Afif being one of the biggest reasons they're at this World Cup, Pedro Miguel has kind of been that Robin to Afif's Batman. Because when there has been those moments where Qatar have needed another person to step up for them to, you know, maybe take that burden off of Afif's shoulders a little bit, Miguel has kind of shown up. He has scored big goals against Iran, the UAE, which helped get Qatar to this situation. And with how bad their defense is, and Pedro Miguel probably being one of their, if not their best defender, I think you could argue he could be a breakout star for them because they need him to be good defensively, to be a leader defensively. And with working under a coach like Lopetegui, maybe he could bring the best out of Miguel. We kind of saw a little bit of that in their 5th round of Asian World Cup qualification where Miguel came up huge for them. I believe scoring the winning goal that qualified him for the World Cup. If not that, the equalizing goal, but you guys get what I mean. I think defense is the biggest point that they need to address and that Lopetegui needs to lock down, and I think Miguel has to be the catalyst for that. So for Qatar, that's why I went with Pedro Miguel. So now for the next national team, it is Jordan. And for their best player, I've gone with Al-Tamari, who is a right winger for Stade Rennais. And for their breakout star, I've gone with Ali Olwan, who is a striker for Al Sailiya. Jordan, I think, are the most interesting national team when it comes to this World Cup. I'm very high on them. I think they are playing with house money at this World Cup. The issue is they've been having a lot of big hit injuries going into this tournament in their offensive positions. Al-Tamari has got to come up clutch for them. He has got to carry some serious weight for them offensively. He has been a big catalyst to why Jordan have been so good in these recent couple of years, from the Asian Cups to World Cup qualification to getting to this point. And he plays in Liga. He's a good player in Liga. So I don't think there's any question on their best player, especially with all the injuries they have offensively. But when it comes to the breakout star, I'm not going to act like I know a whole lot about Olwan. He's a little bit of an unknown entity for me. But with all these injuries, like I've discussed, for Jordan, offensively, he could be a surprise package. He may need to be a guy to take the weight off of Al-Tamari. They need some other cooks in the kitchen for this offense. And from the questions I asked to Jordanian fans, they spoke very highly of Olwan. And from everything I saw on YouTube, he looks pretty legit. He is young. He's got a lot of potential. And when you are young and have a lot of potential, you don't got much to lose. You only have so much to gain if you take risks. So that could work in his benefit. But I'm not going to act like an expert here. Again, like I've said for a few of the other national teams, to all the Jordan fans, let me know in the comments down below if you have any other suggestions or if I cooked a little bit here with Ali Olwan. And now moving on to the final national team, Saudi Arabia. For their best player, it's most definitely got to be Salim Al-Dawsari, who is a left winger for Al Hilal. And for their breakout star, I've gone with Al-Juwayr, who is a center defensive mid for Al Qadisa. Al-Dawsari has been the guy for Saudi Arabia since the 2022 World Cup. The goal against Argentina put him on the map. He has been one of the best players in Asian football the last couple of years. He always wins that award. He's had a relatively good campaign since the rehiring of Hervé Renard. Hervé Renard really loves the guy, so I think he always brings the best out of him. I think the problem is there's only so much you get from Al-Dawsari. There is that cap you could say, from him. But I don't really know what other players you can pick for Saudi Arabia when it comes to their best players. I think he is an evident shoo-in. For the breakout star, I went with Al-Juwayr because he's relatively young. He's a player that is very highly proclaimed in the Saudi league as a Saudi Arabian midfielder, and definitely Saudi Arabia's midfield is a place of concern. It is an area of concern. Again, I'm not going to act like an expert where I know much about him because I honestly don't. I've seen some highlights here and there. He's a player that Saudi football fans think very highly about, but he is a young player. And from everything I've seen from my boy Hervé Renard, who I love to the depths of the Asian football world, I know he could bring the best out of him. And in that midfield, more particularly a guy that plays in the CDM role that needs to really carry that somewhat weak defense that Saudi Arabia has, he could be an interesting pick for them at this World Cup as a breakout star. But yes, boys and girls, that's going to be the end of the video. But as I always say, my opinion only matters so much. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. Do you guys agree with the players that I selected? Disagree with who I selected? Let me know your guys' thoughts, because I want to try to do a part 2 to this, and I want your guys' input on it. So make sure to drop a comment. As I said, if you're a big Asian football fan, make sure to subscribe. We want to hit 6,000 subscribers before the 2026 World Cup, and I know we can do that with your guys' help. Let's get over 100 likes. Let's put in that good juju for all of our Asian national teams at the World Cup. And if you guys enjoyed this video, don't stop watching now. Make sure to click this video next. The YouTube algorithm specifically recommended this video from my channel for you all to watch, so make sure to click there, and then click here as I post content weekly on the channel and you don't want to miss it. And boys and girls, I hope you'll have a lovely day.